All right, well, welcome to a mini video tutorial in how to visualize potential development or proposed development in Google Earth Pro. This is development visualization, and this will be your class. First of all, this is a demonstration of how to create visualizations like this. This is a development called, well, it's actually multiple developments in an area called Ravenswood in East Palo Alto. Visualizations like this allow people and the general public an idea of the true scope of what is being proposed. Oftentimes the renderings from the developers are made to be very appealing and don't show the true or full story. That is what this tutorial is going to allow you to show the full scope of these developments. So the first thing you need to do is you need to do your research. You need to define the actual developments being made. A lot of the time the research can be at least begun on each city's individual planning site. This tutorial is going to be using an example called Broadway Plaza, which is in Redwood City, California. The tools that you will need for creating visualizations is, with this tutorial, you need Windows 10 or up. I suppose Windows 11 would do the trick as well. There probably is a way to do this on Mac. I just do not have a Mac with which to experiment with. So you're going to need something to do image manipulation. We use Paint, 3D Paint, or Microsoft Paint and GIMP to do the image manipulation, and to create the 3D buildings we use SketchUp and Google Earth to render them out. So first is prepping the image overlay. What I'm going to do is load the planning documents. The planning documents oftentimes are these large PDFs which are difficult to read through, but they have the information that you need to find the footprint. These are called elevations. They're elevations done from the top and from the side. These are the architectural renderings, I guess you could call them. So this is an example of a side rendering, so you can see the actual height. But oftentimes you have to really search through these things to find the information that you need. For those who need more information, if you look here, this has a height of 70 feet and 6 inches. Feet is by just the dash, and inches is by the dash dash, just so you know. So I'm going to scroll up a bit to find the overall footprint for these. It's going to take a second for it to load. Spot on. Okay, so this is the architectural rendering of what this development is supposed to look like from the top. It looks like they actually did it on top of Google Maps or Earth, which should make this easier. I'm going to scroll in a bit to get a higher res version. That looks like all the detail that I'm going to need. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down Shift and the Windows key to give Shift, Windows key, and S to allow a screen capture. I'm going to capture enough of this image so that I can use the side streets and buildings as reference to help me place this image properly in Google Earth. So that is now captured. Now I'm going to load up Microsoft Paint. Since the capture automatically puts it into the memory buffer, I can just go paste. And now that has been pasted. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to crop this. It will automatically crop it to the correct size. And now I'm going to do a save as. I'm going to save it as a PNG. PNG by its naturally preserves alpha transparency, which you're going to need when you go to place it on the rendering. So this is, let's see, this is where I will put it. I will make a new folder in here. This folder I'm going to call, let's see, we'll call it Viz Toot, where I will put all of my files. I'm going to double click on Viz Toot, and then I'm going to call this the name of the overlay, which is 3 Broadway Plaza. Overlay. I tend to number these so that I can make multiple versions of them as well. All right, I'm going to save that. So that's now done. At this point, I do not need Paint anymore, so I'm going to close it. Now I'm going to load up GIMP. Okay, so actually, you know what? First, let me go back to my slides. All right. Prepping the image overlay. Yep. So we've taken a screenshot. We have gone into Paint, and we have, so we've taken a screenshot. That's done. We've gone into Paint, and we've turned it into a PNG, and now we're going to do cleanup in GIMP. So in GIMP, I'm going to say File, New, say OK. Actually, I didn't need to do that. Instead, what I could do is I can go to File, Open, and then I need to find where I just put that. Let's see here. Where did I put that? I think I put it into, there we go. Sierra Club Viz Toot. Okay, there we go. So there's the Broadway Plaza overlay. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open this. Now, this is the entire thing. Like I said before, you want to preserve enough of this so that you have reference when you're going to place it down on top of Google Earth. But you don't need to have too much information, and I think actually it has a stronger impact when you bring it in closer to the actual building footprints. So to do this, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to, so the first thing I need to do is I probably need to add a transparency layer to this. And the way you do that is you go to Layer, you go to Transparency, and then you say Add Alpha Channel. What that does is makes it so that in the background will be transparency rather than a solid color when you go to delete. So now I'm going to use the the free select tool, which is this guy here, and I'm going to go through this and snip out the pieces that are needed. You can speed up this part of the video if you know how this is done. Notice I'm leaving enough of the side street and city streets to use as reference because you are going to have to eyeball this to put it in the right place when it comes time. This rendering is actually fairly busy. I don't know if it's going to work that well, just because it's showing a lot of like architectural additives, right? Like these I don't know, pretty trees, or these red lines that show, I'm not sure what those red lines are for. But anyway, so now I have, you can see the dashed line around the area that I've selected, or that we have selected. And now what we're going to do is I'm going to go to select, and I'm going to say invert. This then selects everything other than what I just selected. I'm going to hit the delete key, and it fills the background with transparency. Next, I'm going to go to image, and I'm going to go to crop to content. Image, crop to content. That will automatically resize the image to be the same size as the actual content that is there. I guess I could have also done crop to selection, but crop to content works just fine. Now I'm going to do two things. First, I have to do a save, and it's going to save it in its own file format, which is great. I'm going to say save. Yep. And then I need to go up and do an export. So I go to File, and I'm going to go Export As. So under Export As in GIMP, the way you export it as a certain file type is you just type in the file type at the end. So you may have to actually type in like a .png at the end, and that .png will determine what the file will export as. Again, it's not a save as, this is an export as. Not save, but export as. There already is a 3 Broadway Plaza overlay. I'm just going to wipe that one out because I don't need extra things cluttering my folders. I'm going to say export. Yes, do you want to replace it? Yes, I want to replace it. I don't remember what these details are, but I'm just going to export it. Okay, so now I've got a PNG exported. All right, now I do not need GIMP anymore either because I have my image. I don't need Paint anymore, and I don't need GIMP anymore, so I'm going to close GIMP. All right, and we're going to move on to the next thing, which is placing the overlay in Google Earth Pro. So first of all, we need to find the location where it actually needs to be placed. We're going to add the new image overlay. We're going to resize the image overlay. And then after that, we're going to take a measurement of the footprint so that we can use that measurement to build the 3D that we need. So first to Google Earth. I have already found this spot here. So this is Google Earth Pro. You can only use the desktop version of Google Earth. You cannot do this in the online version of Google Earth. And I should have said that earlier. You also cannot use the online version of SketchUp Pro. You actually have to have the downloaded executable version of SketchUp to do the 3D as well. Okay, so you'll notice that, okay, so this is Google Earth Pro. I'm not going to try to teach you how to navigate in Google Earth Pro. I think there's plenty of tutorials that will show you that already. But this is the area where the developer wants to put the new development. Over here on the left side, I've already created a new folder which is going to contain stuff. I've got places, my places. The way to create this folder was I went to add, and then I said folder, and I called it Viz Tutorial 3. Viz Tutorial 3 Broadway Plaza. I've also got a pin that I already placed. The way you place pins is by clicking here. These place marks can be used, or what the way that I use them is as camera place marks. So say you want to quickly find something that you've been looking at or working on. I go here and I click on the VizCam Toot Cam 1, Viz Toot Cam 1, and it will automatically move the camera to look where I want. So this is a good way for you to save camera angles, which we can talk about later. You want to make sure down here under layers that you have terrain turned on, but you probably want to turn off most of the rest of this. You probably don't need borders or labels or the other stuff, or gallery. 3D buildings I think are useful sometimes, but you may need to turn them off. If you turn that check mark on and off, you'll notice that the image changes quite a bit. You also may or may not need the roads and transportation. I'm going to turn that off as well. I use that to find the location where to place this. So now that this is where the development is going to go, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new overlay. The way to do that is you go to Add, and then you go Image Overlay. I'm going to click that, and you'll see this green outline in the world. Oops, and there's another thing you need to see, which is this. So this is how you actually add this is how you name the overlay and how you are able to change its properties. I'm going to call this, just for simplicity's sake, Viz Toot 1, and then I need to browse to where the overlay is on my machine. I'm going to click that. This will take me to, I need to go to the Sierra Club folder. I need to go to Viz Toot. And here is the 3 Broadway Plaza overlay. I'm going to click that, and I'm going to say Open. All right. Now it has been placed in the world. All right. Word of caution. Do not click OK until it is placed properly. You can go back and change its properties later, but there's a couple of tricky things about this that need to be understood. So I need to keep this window. I'm going to keep this window actually here, and I'm going to keep it active while I am doing this work. Now, you can see the overlay is chopped up by the 3D buildings underneath it. This is because the overlay is placed on the ground level, and the buildings are rendered by Google on top of that. So when you are placing these things, what you want to do is you want to probably turn off your 3D buildings so you can see the actual area underneath. Now this is starting to look a little more like the actual development. So these handles are all ways to manipulate the image overlay that we've put down. I'm going to, actually one thing I'm going to do is, now I don't need that pin anymore. I'm going to, oh, I can't turn the pin off, so I need to leave it there for now. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the center, which is that X there in the middle, and I can drag it around and look at it from different angles. You can see that it's the same shape. Okay, so now what I need to do is I need to resize it and position it correctly on top of the Google Earth. One thing that can make this easier to do is by clicking, or not clicking, but changing the transparency of the image itself so you can see better what is underneath it. So I'm going to kind of turn that down a little bit so that I can hopefully position a little better. All right, now I'm going to resize this thing, and I'm going to rotate it into place. To resize, you have to grab it by one of these handles. What I would recommend is do not only grab it by the corner handles and only scale it proportionally or a uniform scale. To do a uniform scale, what you have to do is you have to hold down the Shift key on your keyboard, and then you can drag it in and out, and it will do a uniform scale. There is no undo. You cannot undo goof ups. If you do not hold down the Shift and you scale the image lengthwise or widthwise by accident, you cannot undo it. You have to start over again. So be careful about this. You have to hold down the Shift, and then you can drag it around, and you can position it and move it in whichever way you like. All right, so now I'm going to start trying to position it properly in the world. Okay, the other thing is that to rotate this image, you have to use that little diamond right there. There is no other way to rotate this image. So I'm going to rotate the image until it is the same size as, or the same orientation as the image underneath. And now I'm going to begin the process of scaling it and placing it. And typically the roads are what I use to find the correct scale. I'm going to just go ahead and do this. Probably stop talking for a second. This does take some practice. So it looks like it's a little big still. I'm going to turn the opacity up so I can see it better. Hold down Shift before I scale. All right, getting there. Sometimes developer plans are not accurate to the real world. Sometimes their plans are a little bit off, which is tedious, but it's just something you have to deal with. What they present is not necessarily what is actually in the real world. Although I'm sure they have to be precise someplace, but sometimes the things that they have on their websites or on the city sites are not precise. I find it's actually easier to use the black and white renderings because with less detail in the image, it's easier to match it to the what's happening in the background. And this is like an eyeballing process. This has to be done by eyeballing. They don't provide, developers and cities don't provide the actual 3D plans as far as we are aware. Or the files. They don't provide the actual 3D files for this. So you have to do your best to get it in the right place. Alright, I think that's pretty good. It looks alright. You might want to look at it from different angles and see. I'm going to try turning the opacity on and off. Okay, I think that's pretty good. So this now is where they want to, so I believe this is an accurate representation, or at least as accurate as it might be a little too big there. Remember, there is no undo, so everything you do in here like sticks. Every time you move anything to look, there is no undo. You have to go back and you have to physically fix it yourself. It looks like actually, okay, I think maybe I made it a little bit big. Let me take this down a little bit more. I think that's about right. And the plans, like I said, don't always match the real world. So sometimes you have to kind of figure it out. So that is now done. I'm going to call that done. And I'm going to say OK. Actually, first I'm going to turn the opacity back up. And then I'm going to say OK. All right. Now, remember I said there's no undos. There are still no undos. But one thing that you can do. Oh, actually, I need this now. This overlay. I'm going to drag that up into the tutorial folder where I had it before. Alright, put it into the tutorial folder that I created before. So, like I said, there are no undos, but what you can do if you want to change this overlay or change any of these things here once you've placed them under places is you can right click on them, click on properties, and then you have these same widgets from before. All right, cancel that. So this is now done. Now what I want to do is I want to get the actual measurements from one of these faces so that I can use, or one of these buildings, so that I can use that measurement to build out the 3D buildings in SketchUp. The way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to choose a simple, I'll choose a straight face, such as, say, building 3 here. And then I'm going to go up, click on the ruler. This is show ruler, actually use ruler. I'm going to choose a line and I'm going to measure from point to point by clicking there out to there. So I know that that is 184 feet. I'm going to write down that that's 184 feet. I'm going to clear that. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this. Well, actually, let's show you what I'm going to do. So we have that. We have that measurement. We have one building measured out properly. You may also be able to actually find the accurate measurements in the architectural renderings. And if you can, that's great, because then you can build your buildings to be the same as the architectural renderings. But for this purpose, sometimes those are difficult to find, and this will allow an accurate visualization. This method that we're doing here. So next, I'm going to go into SketchUp. All right, this is SketchUp. So SketchUp Pro. This, you can only do this with SketchUp Pro. You cannot do this with the online version of SketchUp. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom out a bit, and then in SketchUp, and if you, this is not a tutorial to teach you how to use SketchUp. You can find plenty of quality tutorials on how to use SketchUp. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a face. I'm going to come up here, I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to draw a rectangle. Okay, this rectangle, I need to set it to be 184 feet. To do that, I'm going to type in, so if you look down here in this bottom corner, and again, if you need to learn how to use SketchUp, you should watch lots of the other many quality tutorials. So down here in this corner down here is where you see where it says dimensions. So since I just created that face, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a box that's 184 feet across by typing in 184 and then the dash, which equals a foot, and then a comma, and then I'm going to type in, let's see here. If I remember correctly, it was an odd shape, so I'm just going to say 30. So that should create something that is 184 by 30. All right. So you can already start to see the sense of scale of what this is going to, how big it is. That is a scaled human, and this is just one face of one building. But that is now 184 feet long. So next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the image into here. And actually, you know what? Let me back out and let me make sure that I'm covering in my slides. Okay, so yep, place the reference shape. We're going to scale the image overlay to the reference shape. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to place a reference shape, which we just did. Next, we're going to scale the image overlay to the reference shape. We're going to use the pencil tool to outline each building's footprint into a face. We're then going to extrude the faces to the correct heights. We're going to add color and texture to the buildings so that they are visible. And then after that, we're going to export them so that they can be imported into SketchUp. Okay, so back to SketchUp again. in SketchUp, what I want to do is I want to bring in that image, and the way that I do that is I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to go to Import. Here, I need to find the folder again, which is VizToot 3 Broadway Plaza Overlay. I'm going to say Import. So as soon as I click, it's going to automatically place it, and then what I want to do is I need to scale it up so that the building 3 is the building 3 face is the same size as this thing. So I'm going to click, and I'm going to start moving it so that it's placed. Next, I still need to scale that, so that edge right there, that side of the building, it needs to be the same size as this. So the way to do that is to scale this image, which means I come here, I use the scale tool. Since it's already selected, I can just click it, and then scale about opposite point, scale it out. And I'm now going to use the move tool. I need to move it so that it is near enough that face. Alright, looks like I've scaled it a little bit too big. So I'm going to scale it down again. Notice I'm using the corner where it has the uniform scale around opposite point. It's because I don't want to change this. I want to keep this footprint accurate. I'm going to move it to be, nope, still a little too big. Still looks a little too big. Scale it some more. You want this to be accurate because when you build these buildings in here, as long as you have the scale of this image set correctly, you will build these buildings to the correct scale as well. And then when you export them and import them into Google, they will have the correct scale automatically. Is that pretty close? We're getting there. Scale it again. Even closer. Pretty close, although I'd like to make it as accurate as I can. Alright, that's pretty good. Maybe a tiny bit more scaling, just a smidge. And I'm betting that is going to do the trick. Okay, so now this image has been scaled up to the correct size. Oh, when I was setting the template for creating this, I used architectural, by the way. Alright, now I no longer need that face there, so I'm going to get rid of it. And next, what we're going to do is we're going to trace the outlines of these buildings into the 3D buildings that we're going to need. So I'm going to use, oops, I don't know what I just did. Click there, click there. So I'm going to use the pencil tool now, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start actually constructing the faces, or the footprints of the building I'm constructing the footprints of the building in 2D so that they can then be turned into 3D. So we use the pencil tool or the line tool. Click on that, and now what I'm going to do is go through and create the 2D images that, or create the 2D in 3D that will be lofted into 3D. So first I'm going to do building 3. I'm not going to make this precise because really all we need to do is get a 3D footprint of the building. I'm going to make sure that it is on face and image, and then I'm going to start drawing. The image itself. Now you'll know that it's finished when I'm going to go and click on the last one, which is end point. You'll know that you've closed this shape when the whole thing turns gray, hopefully like so. There we go. So that is now a 2D representation of a 3D building. And yes, it's rough, but I'm not going for architectural accuracy. I'm just going for 3D placement. So now I'm going to start on this building. This is going to be building 2. There's building 2. I guess I'll do building 1 just to keep this, do this group first. Sometimes you may need to position the image differently when doing this because it will sometimes try to draw, since this is actually in 3D and not in 2D, it will try to draw up instead of to the side, which you don't want to do. You want to keep this all in on the image face itself. And you'll know if it closes or not. There you go, that closed, so that's good. And there's no weird lines that are going up on the sides. I'm going to maneuver over here. Just in the interest of time, I'm not going to do these little things that stick off. Instead, I'll just pick a halfway place in between. Except I'll add a little bit of detail here. Just thinking now, so not talking so much. I guess I should talk more. All right, there we go. So now I've built most of the 2D versions of the 3D buildings. One left to go, which is building A. Let's make sure that I'm on the correct axis. Something about this one doesn't feel right. Yeah, it didn't work. All right, so I'm going to undo this one because it didn't work. Ah, there we go. So what happened was, you see that piece here? That actually drew up in 3D rather than on the face. So in a way, it's actually good to see this because you can see, what went wrong. I'm going to delete these now. Whoops. Don't want to delete the whole thing. I just want to delete that. All right, and now I'm going to go back and do this one again. I've got actually, you know what? The easiest thing to do would be to just undo the whole thing. And then I guess I'll redo that last bit. There we go. All right, so I'm gonna do this one again from scratch. But yes, if you are clicking around in the face and it seems like you've completed it, but it doesn't complete the face, then there's a good chance that you have created a point somewhere else in space, not in 2D, but up in 3D. So I'm going to start over again. Make sure on face and image. Yep. On face and image. Yep. Extend edge, that I can live with. Perpendicular is fine. I do not want it on that other axis. Perpendicular from point. Does that work? Yep, that works. Perpendicular to edge. I'll just make it perpendicular to edge so that it creates a nice solid shape. Okay, there we go. So now you'll see that these gray boxes are the same footprints of each of the individual buildings that are in the plan, and now what I can do is I can actually loft them up or raise them up to be the correct size. So what I've done is I've already gone through and looked at the architectural plans to find the actual sizes. Sometimes these are difficult to find, but I think these were down here. And again, I'm not being 100% accurate in these things. I just want to show the 3D footprint of the building itself. Loading. Well, we'll come back to that. So I'm going to go back to SketchUp again, and I know that these buildings here are building. So this is B1. This is B1 from their plan. This is B2, and this is B3. So B1 is 83 feet tall. The way to loft this is I'm going to go now and choose the push-pull. I'm going to select that face and drag it up a bit. Once that's done, it's been moved up. Now I'm going to type in, remember this little box down here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to type in 83 with a dash at the end to put in the actual correct size. So 83 and a dash. 83 dash, enter. Now that is very close to the actual size of that building. Next I'm going to do B2, which is 80 feet. So I'm going to go up there, type in 80 dash, and then the third one, B3, is 65 feet. 65 dash, enter. Now, these are now 3D objects that hold roughly the same volume as the actual planned buildings. These ones here are, let's see here. This is building A. I don't know why they didn't number it, continue numbering from building from 3 on, but for some reason this is A, this is B, and this is C. So A, in the interest of time, I'm just going to make them all 70 feet tall because I believe that is the size they're going to be. So to do this, I'm going to go to my selection tool. I'm going to select that face. I'm going to select this face, and I'm going to select that face. You can see they're selected by their little dash lines. Now I go to the push-pull. I'm going to, I guess I couldn't do them as a group, so I guess I got to do them individually. So I'm going to move each one up by 70. So they're 70 feet tall. All right, so now we have the actual 3D buildings on top of the overlay, and they're built to scale. I'm going to very quickly apply textures. I'm not going to use this time to show you how to create textures. Instead, what I'm going to do is just apply textures, but you can change the way the textures are displayed so that they actually can be used to show height as well, or show scale. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go actually I'm going to select all the buildings. An easy way to select all is going to be to look at it from the side and then click drag over those, which will select all those different objects. And now I'm going to go here and I'm going to select, let's see, what would be a nice simple pattern would be a good pattern. I'm going to use, if I can find one, this one. So I'm going to click on that. That then puts it in the actual material, and now I go here and click here, and that has been applied. And it's tiny. So actually I do need to edit this, and I need to change the size that it displays at. So what I'm going to do is change it to 10 foot by 10 foot. There we go. Well, that actually worked out pretty nicely. So now each of these squares should represent 10 feet by 10 feet. So if this is a 70-foot tall building, should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 plus another half. Yep. So this is actually rendering out these things, and the texture is the correct size. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to export these buildings, and I'm going to bring them into Google Earth Pro. Let me just double check my notes. Yep, so we're going to do the exporting. Oh, before that I need to save this. Do a save as. I'm going to put it in the same folder just to keep it all in the same place. I want to call this all buildings. Actually, just call it, I'm just going to call it all. That'll be fine. And then say save. So that is now exported, is now saved as a SketchUp file, and I can reference it later. But what I need to do is I need to export just the buildings. Since we already have the overlay in place, we don't need this overlay, and we want to be able to turn the overlay on and off and not have it be part of this model. So here, what I did before, and I'll do it again, is I'm going to select just the 3D buildings, and I do that by looking at it from the side, using the select tool, dragging from bottom right to top left to select all the different buildings. So now those are all selected. It's grabbed everything in there. I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to go to Export, and I'm going to say Export 3D Model. So this is going to export these as a, you want to make sure to choose the DAE file, because that is what can be imported into Google Earth. Collida file. All right, I'm just going to call it all, actually I'll call it all O2. All right, I'm going to do the export. That was quick. So now we are done with SketchUp. We're going to go into Google Earth. Back to Google Earth. And we are now going to import that 3D on top of the rendering of the real world. Let me check my notes. All right. So we're going to import the building. I'm going to show you how to move the camera and how to save the images. Adding 3D into the world is very much like adding an image into the world, an image overlay. You just go to Add, and you say Model. I'm going to call this, I'll just call it Viz Toot. Actually, no, I'm going to call it 3 Broadway Plaza. Because I want it to be relatively accurate. And now I'm going to browse to where the model actually is. You see the DAE file. I'm going to click it, and I'm going to say open. So the 3D has been moved into the world, and it is to scale and is textured. Now, the reason why I was able to do this as one group is because I know the terrain where these are going in is relatively flat. If the terrain was not flat, then I would have needed probably to export the buildings as individual buildings and then import them individually as well. But for this one, I know that this area here in the real world is relatively flat, so I was able to bring them in. All right, now what needs to happen is these buildings need to be placed properly on top of the overlay. First of all, I'm going to call it actually 3 Broadway Plaza, all in 3D, just so that I remember what it is. And I'm going to drag this now and move it and put it in place. You don't need to scale it, but you are going to need to place it, and you're going to need to rotate it in place. Notice that it fits directly on top of the image though. That means that since we use the image and the measurements from Google Earth and we built to that image and those measurements, the things we built will fit directly on top. I'm going to match up that corner. Pretty good. I can look at it from different angles to see. Again, don't worry too much about getting this perfect. You don't need to make it perfect. You're just helping people visualize the impact of a proposed or planned development. Okay, so I have now placed these buildings. Didn't have to scale them, but they're in the right place. I'm going to say I don't need to change anything here, but say you did need to actually like change their altitude, you can click on altitude and change from clamp to ground to something else if you like, or you can say how far up they go. Again, I don't need to do that in this video, in this tutorial. I'm going to say OK, and they are now placed. So this is now a relatively accurate rendering of 3 Broadway Plaza. You can maneuver the camera and look at it from different angles. You can even look at it from street view if you like to render out videos or render out images. So another method of visualization here is to turn 3D buildings on and 3D buildings off and turn visuals on and off. So you notice, remember in the beginning I made a folder? As long as you have created a folder and you've placed all of your assets inside that folder, you can turn off the folder, which will turn off the visibility for the entire thing. That's why you use folders to group things properly. But, so, that's what it looks like now. I'm going to turn on 3D buildings. So this is what it is now. Oh, nice little strip mall, I guess. And this is just the overlay. And then this adds in the new 3D buildings. And this is the actual impact or a visualization of the development so that people have a better sense of what is going to be built. with that, we're going to ring off. I hope you found this informative. I hope you are able to use this video to create your own visualizations of developments and help communities to understand the true impact and footprint of developments being proposed and or that are in the plans to be built right now. You can contact us at the email dvelopviz@gmail.com, DVELOPVIZ@gmail.com. Thank you for watching.